All right, here to discuss it all is Will Guillory. He's the Pelicans beat writer for The Athletic. Let's start with the one big story in hoops that has a relation to the Pelicans. Former Pels head coach Monty Williams being fired in Detroit. Should the Pelicans hire Monty as an assistant coach, do you think?
Yeah, they're going to have a big hole in that, lead assistant seat with James Borrego likely leaving this summer. I think Monty is a great candidate. Obviously, he's got a relationship with Willie Green, but I'm just not sure about this spot for Monty. I think they need more of an offensive-minded guy. That's why they brought Borrego in to kind of balance out, what makes Willie Green great as a defensive-minded guy. I think they're going to look more at somebody that's going to spice up that offense, give them more opportunities to give, guys like Trey Murphy and Jordan Hawkins those open threes.
So you're a believer that James Borrego is basically out the door pretty much. I mean, obviously he didn't get the job with the Lakers.
Right.
He's up for the job in Cleveland. Before he leaves, are the Pelicans making any kind of push to keep him in-house?
I think he's got a lot of people in the building who are big fans of him. I think they feel like he made a real impact there in year one. You saw the clips of him last year after practices with Brandon Ingram, with Zion Williamson, kind of irons things out with the offense. Obviously, they got some room to improve, but I think they feel like he made an impact. But I think, once you got opportunities to be a head coach out there, he's a guy who's a former head coach. Like I said, very respected around the league. So I think he's going to have an opportunity somewhere.
I can't remember the last time we talked about the Pelicans front office coaching staff so much in the offseason, but you also got Fred Vinson going over to Milwaukee before Monty got let go there, which is interesting. But to lose him and the effect he's had on this franchise, not just the Pelicans, but the Hornets, that's a big deal. How much does that stunt the growth of the shooters on this team based on what Fred's been able to do with them so far?
Oh, no, there's no doubt it's going to make an effect. I mean, Fred is one of the best in the business at what he does. You can go down his track record with guys like Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Herb Jones. You've seen slight improvements with Dyson Daniels. I think that's a big thing that the Pelicans have talked about in the past where they've drafted certain guys with the mindset of, hey, we're going to stick him with Fred. He's going to figure it out. You see that with Herb Jones. Herb Jones was a guy who didn't shoot any threes in college, and he was shooting almost 40% last year. So I think that's something that's definitely going to affect the way they evaluate this roster moving forward, the type of guys that they're going to develop. But overall, they've said over and over again, they want to be a team that takes a lot of three-pointers. I think that's going to remain a priority, and I think they're going to get somebody in there that can do a similar type of job to what Fred was doing.
Maybe a priority hiring someone as good as Fred Vinson in that job because you've got Jordan Hawkins there who's a shooter who needs to get more playing time, needs to get more consistent with his shot. Free agency opens June 30th. How aggressive do you expect the Pelicans to be from jump?
Well, I think, the NBA, it's always not just free agency, it's trades, right? And I think that's what the Pelicans have always been active in the past, and I think that's where they'll continue to be active. I think one thing for sure that we know is they got to find some answers at the center position. I think Jonas Valanciunas is a guy who's probably going to leave this summer, unrestricted free agent. They want to get somebody who's more of a active guy, an athletic guy who can switch up defensive schemes. I think that's why you've seen Willie Green lean on somebody like Larry Nance as much as he has in the past. Not necessarily a true starting center, kind of lacks that size. So I think that's where you're going to see them really get aggressive, looking for centers, looking for younger guys. And obviously there's the Brandon Ingram situation. And what's going to happen with him? Are they going to re-sign him? Or are they going to trade him? So I think, as always, we're going to see David Griffin being active on those trade calls.
Is trading Brandon Ingram their best move, you think?
I've been a big proponent of not trading Brandon Ingram personally. I think, as we've seen throughout the playoffs, as great as it is to have somebody like Zion Williamson, that's the key to winning the championship, a true blue superstar, you still need that number two. As great as Luka Doncic was, you saw him make the finals when he got Kyrie Irving next to him. And I think while Brandon Ingram does have certain flaws, there's certain parts of his game he has to improve, especially playing next to Zion Williamson. I think getting that true blue number two all-star who's still under 30 years old next to Zion, I think it's going to be difficult to find if you trade B.I. It's certainly possible. There's guys like Darius Garland, Trae Young who will be out there. We'll see if they can kind of materialize that type of trade. But I'm a big fan of Brandon Ingram and what he's done here, and I think allowing those guys to continue to grow will be the best thing for this team.
It's interesting you mentioned Garland and Trae Young, and other guys have been mentioned as well. There have been so many different trade rumor packages thrown out there. What do you think is the one that has the most traction?
I think obviously that Cleveland team I think is a one I've had circled for a while because for one the Pelicans have been interested in Jarrett Allen for a while. Their starting center, an all-star guy.
He checks the boxes on a lot of things.
No doubt. Defensively, rebounding, like I said, a guy who can play multiple defensive styles, rim protection, something that this team has lacked in the past. So yeah, I think he's a guy that they really love. When we talk about them needing a potential point guard to play next to Zion Williamson, Darius Garland could be a perfect match with his pick and roll ability, shooting the ball. But I think there are going to be a lot of teams knocking on their door, right? Whether it be for Garland, for Allen, Donovan Mitchell is a guy who's going to be on the radar for a lot of teams. So yeah, a lot of teams are going to be going after those guys, but I think that's the team that kind of makes the most sense as a potential trade partner.
What do you think is the minimum the Pelicans should accept in exchange for Brandon Ingram?
I think for one, you got to figure out the starting center position, even if it's not necessarily a
So
Jared
that's your
Allen
priority
type.
right there.
Not necessarily a priority, but I think you can't walk away from a Brandon Ingram deal not knowing what you're doing at center, just because the free agent field is just so bleak this year at center. Like, you got some guys who are going to get close to a max deal, and you got guys who might not even get the minimum. So I think it's going to be really difficult. And for one, I think, like I said, you got to find somebody who you can look at as a true all-star playing next to Zion Williamson, because I say this a lot of times in comparison. There were a lot of Saints fans who were looking at Drew Brees at the end saying, noodle arm, he can't throw it like he used to, but once you got rid of Drew Brees, then all of a sudden you were living in Trevor Siemian, Jameis Winston world, where it's like, man, it'd be nice to have that guy back. So I think
even with the noodle arm.
Right, yeah, exactly. So you can get rid of your semi-all-star who you don't like, but once you get rid of that guy, finding a new one is going to be a different challenge.
So basically what you're saying is not trading Brandon Ingram is not the end of the world. Doesn't make you a worse basketball team as long as you address the center position, which I know you said it's not really the priority, but it feels like it is the priority with this team. That's where you lack.
Oh, no doubt. It's going to be a major priority this summer for this team to get somebody who not only can start in there from day one, but who could be the answer moving forward. When you start looking at the contracts they're about to hand out, with Trey Murphy getting a new extension, potentially a BI deal. We know Zion Williamson had got his max deal a few years ago. So you're going to have a limited amount of ways to fill that spot. So I think finding the right guy who can be there long term is going to be really important.
Do they bring back any of the free agents they have right now? We know Jose Alvarado has a team option.
Right.
But what about Najee Marshall? I really like him. I like him over Dyson Daniels and what he brings to the court, the energy.
I'm a big fan of Najee Marshall. I mean, the knife, I think he brings a lot, but I just think where they are financially is going to be really tough. I think that's a dude who, especially during the playoff run, I thought he was one of the best players on the team. So I think he probably earned himself a little bit of money this year. I know he was really excited about his improvement as a three-point shooter this year. Shout out to Fred Vincent on that one as well. So I think he's the guy who could potentially go out and get him a little bag this summer.
They bring anybody back?
I think JV's probably gone. Najee, I think they're going to bring Jose back. So, yeah, I think most of the free agents will probably be gone. And obviously they still got picks where they can address some of those. And this team is known for finding guys at the back of the draft. We've seen it over and over again. So I expect them to do that once again.
So the draft comes up on this week, picking number 21 in the draft. They can find a player there that can help. They've been saying this is not a very deep draft at certain positions, obviously. What's your priority at draft pick number 21?
I'm going to stay consistent. It's the center position. I think the one thing where there are a lot of weaknesses at this draft, particularly at the top, there isn't that, that go-to guy who you can say who's a true number one pick. But they got a lot of centers in this draft. A lot of guys. I like Messi from Baylor, the Flipkowski, the kid from Duke. Yeah, he's a really good stretch big. They got a few. The kid Khalil Ware from Indiana. They got a lot of guys, and a lot of guys with varying play styles, which I think is very interesting. They got the true athlete guys. They got guys who can space, guys who can protect the rim. So there are going to be a lot of options. And I think, obviously there are going to be guys who teams are looking up to go up and trade for, like a Donovan Clingan at the top of the draft. I wouldn't be surprised if we hear the Pelicans try to sniff around and maybe move up into the top 10 to go get a guy. So I think, everybody's going to be really aggressive going after centers in this draft. And I think the Pelicans are going to be at the top of that list.
Let me ask you, because you talk about Filipowski, and I've watched him play. Obviously, you and I both have for many, many years. He's a stretch big. He's not a rim protector. So it kind of puts him back in the same situation, to me, as with Jonas Valanciunas, except Filipowski's a little more mobile. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure.
So is that what they really need at that position?
Yeah, and when you're looking at 21, you're not necessarily looking at a guy who's you're going to plug in and start from day one, right? I think you got to build depth there. Remember last year they had JV, Larry Nance, and after that it was basically Cody Zeller. So I think just getting more depth there, more guys who can do different things, right? I think, like I said, it's going to be important to find guys who can stretch the floor, find the guys who can do different things, because it felt like they were very pigeonholed in what they had at the center position last year. And I think that's a big priority for Willie Green, finding guys where they can throw out some different lineups, give some different looks where they're not as predictable as they were last year.
So you're David Griffin, 21 is up. You're taking whom?
I like Messi or Khalil Ware. Those are my two guys at the center
If
position.
both are available, which one are you taking?
I'm going Ware because he can stretch it out to the three-point line. I think a lot of people have compared him to Brook Lopez. Very big body, a guy who can shoot threes, protect the rim. You could develop him over time to have a little bit more of a post game. So that's something that will help this team for sure.
Okay, it all happens on Wednesday night. Pelicans on the clock at number 21. Will Guillory covering the Pelicans all the time for The Athletic. Thank you, Will.
Thank you.